Good morning. Hare Krishna, everybody. We're still in the sixth chapter, sixth canto, first chapter. We've moved to the 16th verse here, which reads, Na tata hiagavam rajam puyata tapa adibihi yata krishnarpita pranas tat parusha nisevya. The translation, my dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life to the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and other methods of atonement that I have previously described. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Tat Purusha refers to a preacher in Krishna consciousness, such as a spiritual master. Srila Narottam Das Thakur said, Shadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payecha Keva. Without serving a bona fide spiritual master, an ideal Vaishnava who can be delivered from the clutches of Maya. This idea is also expressed in many other places. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Rishabdev says, Mahat Sevam Dharamaharva Muktam Tamo Dharam Yositam Shangi Sakam. If one desires liberation from the clutches of Maya, one must associate with a pure devotee, Mahatma. Mahatma is one who engages 24 hours daily in the loving service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, 9 chapter 13 verse, Mahatmanastu mam partha devan prakritamashina bhajanti ananyamanashu gyatva bhutadim avyayam. Quote, O son of Prita, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Thus, the symptom of a Mahatma is that he has no engagement other than service to Krishna. One must render service to a Vaishnava in order to get freed from sinful reactions, revive one's original Krishna consciousness, and be trained in how to love Krishna. This is the result of Mahatma Seva. Of course, if one engages in the service of a pure devotee, the reactions to one's sinful life are vanquished automatically. Devotional service is necessary not to drive away an insignificant stock of sins, but to awaken our dormant love for Krishna. As fog is vanquished at the first glimpse of sunlight, one's sinful reactions are automatically vanquished as soon as one begins serving a pure devotee. No separate endeavor is required. Last paragraph here. The word Krishnarpitam Prana refers to a devotee who dedicates his life to serving Krishna, not to being saved from the path to hellish life. A devotee is Narayana Parayana or Vasudeva Parayana, which means that the path of Vasudeva, or the path of devotional service, is his life and soul. Narayana Parasarve Naku Chashtana Bibhiti. Such a devotee is not afraid of going anywhere. There is a path towards liberation in the higher planetary systems and a path towards the hellish planets. But a Narayana Para devotee is unafraid wherever he is sent. He simply wants to remember Krishna wherever he may be. Such a devotee is unconcerned with heaven and hell. He is simply attached to rendering service to Krishna. When a devotee is put into hellish conditions, he accepts them as Krishna's mercy. Tatenu kampano shishamiksamano. He doesn't protest, oh, I am such a great devotee of Krishna. Why have I been put into this misery? Instead, he thinks, this is Krishna's mercy. Such an attitude is possible for a devotee who engages in the service of Krishna's representative. That is a secret of success. Om Vaganati Marandasya Gana Gana Sarakya Chaksurun Miritam Yena Tajmai Sugara Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhuttade Swayam Rupakara Mayam Tarati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Sri Rupam Shagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parejana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sta Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Deva Guruvani Pachari Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Paskata Desana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. So we were talking last night about how to allow your feedback, and we thought that if you wanted to ask questions or in the comment section, you could do so, and I would try to answer them. Then it occurred to me that I don't really see the comments. They scroll up, but I'm trying to follow my train of thought, not get distracted, so I don't usually pay close attention to what's coming up on the screen because I'm trying to keep my stream of consciousness. And then when you finish the live broadcast, then only can you actually see the comments down below. So I wasn't exactly sure, but anyway, if you have a question, and please keep it on topic if you can, type it, and I'll try to glance at the screen and be aware of any inquiries that you might have simultaneously while we're talking. Now, obviously, the subject matter today is serving a bona fide spiritual master. Several times in this purport, Prabhupada stresses the point that a bona fide spiritual master is one who serves Krishna exclusively, 24 hours a day. There's no gap. Ahaituki apratiyata. Kunti Devi talks about this. He says, Twaime nanya vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit ratim udvadan gangevam atanbati. The Ganges originates high in the Himalayas, and it flows about 1,500 miles until it empties into the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean. There isn't any interruption in that flow. You can research. You can travel the entire 1,500 miles back and forth over and over again. You can take aerial photos, and you won't find any gap. You won't find any hiatus in the flow of the Ganges to the sea. Similarly, a pure devotee, as opposed to a good man, a pious man, is one tejam satata yuktanam. Yukta means he's yoked, just like an oxen is yoked to the plow. He doesn't have the option of going to the left or going to the right or stopping or going off to read a book. Whatever the farmer dictates, he serves the farmer. He serves by pulling that cart. Similarly, a bona fide spiritual master is one who voluntarily puts himself into Krishna's yoke. That means he's basically a sold-out animal. Some people ask, what are these neck beads for? We say it's our dog collar. It means that Krishna owns us, body and soul, lock, stock, and barrel. Prabhupada was like that. I was an English major in college, and I read a lot of fiction. And on the back flap of every book, there would always be, if it was a contemporary book, it would have a picture of the author and say he lives in New York and has a wife and 2 kids and 3 cats. And he was a correspondent here, and he worked for the New York Times, and he's won these and that awards, little biographical information. But the work was a work of fiction. I mean, he used his real life background, but the novel is actually a work of fiction. So there was always a disconnect between the real life of the author and his oeuvre, his work. So this was my conditioning. And first time Prabhupada came to Australia, I think it was in 1971. I was a temple president, and I greeted him, spent pretty much the whole 4 days with him. And the thing that struck me was that it wasn't like the author and the work. There wasn't any dichotomy there. There wasn't a single time during those 4 days that I noticed where Prabhupada took a break from devotional service. I mean, whatever it was, just talk about news or politics or gossip about somebody or describe in detail his plane journey, talk about a recent book he'd read, what's happening in newspapers, coronavirus. Prabhupada was here. He would only use it as a platform for preaching. It wasn't a single time. And I had arranged a lot of public speaking tours, programs for him, some of them at schools and in public auditoriums. He spoke in the Sydney Town Hall, he spoke in the Melbourne Town Hall, several schools he went to. I took him to television studios, and he had interviews, nationwide interviews. And then there was also times when I was just in the room, it was just him and me. He was the same. There wasn't a different Prabhupada. There wasn't what you might call a public persona and then a private persona. Whether he was speaking before hundreds or thousands of people or whether it was just me in the room, he was preaching. And I got the sense that he wasn't trying to tailor himself for different types of people or different types of crowds or different sizes of crowds. It really didn't matter the number of people that were sitting in front of him. And his main concern was not the impression that he would make on them. But I had this strong feeling that everything he did was for Krishna. That he had a sense that Krishna was watching, noting, personally present within his heart, within the hearts of the audience, inside of every atom. Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Krishna is all pervasive. He's inside, he's outside, he's in the atom. I had a strong sense that that was Prabhupada's ultimate audience. It was Krishna. He wasn't a people pleaser. He was a Krishna pleaser. And I think that at first visit to Australia really made a deep impression upon me, a lifelong impression. And of course, he impressed all of his disciples in the same way. We all aspire for that uninterrupted, unmotivated, pure level of devotional service, which he symbolized, which he personified. Now, I've been in Utah for 30 plus years. Utah is a great state, full of people whose moral standards and integrity is far above average. And I know many bishops, I know many stake presidents, and they're wonderful people. They're passionate about God, they're selfless, they're dedicated. But as far as I know, none of them are uninterruptedly and unmotivatedly serving the Lord. They like to go to the movies on Saturday night. Their heart goes pitter-patter sometimes when the latest John Grisham novel is about to be published. They're definitely involved in family life. And Krishna never came down on family life, never said a thing against family life. Supported family life. Krishna himself was a householder, an ideal husband, an ideal father, an ideal king. But there's a difference between being a pious, righteous man and being a pure devotee of the Lord. A pure devotee of the Lord brings the spiritual world to your doorstep. You can see it. There's a magical effect that when a pure devotee is speaking, you see, you feel the spiritual world. Any doubts you have about the existence of a transcendental realm are dissipated. I remember a few years ago, my mother passed away, and I went home to Pennsylvania for the memorial service. And I was in the priest, I forget his name, Episcopalian priest, tweed jacket, tasseled loafers. Ivy School graduate. And we talked, and it was a very nice, cordial talk. Then came the memorial service, and he started things off from the pulpit. And we in the office, we had talked about the spiritual world. And we had talked about God. And I think to a level that he was unused to. I think, Prabhupada said, these boys and girls, they were brought up in Christian families. They were brought up in a Christian culture. They were brought up going to Christian churches, but they never particularly cared for God. That was certainly my story prior to meeting Prabhupada. But now that we've met a pure devotee, now that the spiritual world has been revealed to us, now, Prabhupada said, now they are mad after God. They are mad after God. So when I was talking to the priest, I'm fairly certain that God came up, the spiritual world came up in very explicit terms, more so than what he was used to, in experiencing, what to speak of laity, congregation, even amongst his own peers. And so with that in mind, and I'm just kind of speculating here, but when he got up to talk, I think he was still resonating with our conversation, and he was, I think, very much aware that I was in the audience. So he started to talk about the spiritual world, which was nice. Appreciated that. But every fourth or fifth word was, I think, perhaps, I imagine it to be. In all due respect, it wasn't very compelling. It's kind of like the spiritual world was, if you want to go to the spiritual world, it's like existing somewhere in his brain. It wasn't, you didn't get the impression of a eternal, spiritual, blissful, ever-evolving, exciting, changing, dynamic, thrill at any moment sort of a place. It was just like whatever he was thinking at the moment, So, although he was, I think he was somewhat inspired to try to inspire the audience to be more keen about going to the spiritual world, it actually had the opposite effect. You have to be realized. You have to be realized. And the thing about Prabhupada was, when he talked about the spiritual world, I mean, if I talk about going to Macy's, the main grocery store in Spanish Fork, I talk about it quite convincingly. If you heard me talk about Macy's, you wouldn't doubt that there was a Macy's and that I'd been there, because I know it intimately. I've been hundreds of times. There's no element of speculation on my part. There wouldn't be no element of doubt on your part. So when Prabhupada spoke about the spiritual world, there was no doubt. He was speaking about something fully realized. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasavi. Chintamani Pakara Sadmashu Kalpa Vriksha Lakshavitu Susurabi Palyantam Lakshmi Saha Sadbrahma Sevimanam Govindamari Purusham Tamahang Vajami. The spiritual world is described by Lord Brahma as consisting of Chintamani. The trees there are wish-fulfilling desire trees, that anything that you want for the service of the Lord, the tree will produce it. The cows produce unlimited quantities of milk from which you make butter, yogurt, cheese, and offer to the Lord. And the Lord there is surrounded by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune who cannot leave his side even for a moment. When Prabhupada quoted those verses and explained them to us, we caught on fire. We caught on fire. Here was, in fact, an explicit description of the spiritual world by someone who was fully realized. And for the first time, the spiritual world took on an attractive quality. I think in the Western countries, whatever we know or intimate about the spiritual world is pretty much put together by mental speculation. And as a result, there isn't that keenness, there isn't that fervor, there isn't that enthusiasm. We go to church, we say our prayers, we give our donations, but we're really holding on to our house and our family and our car and our position. We're really trying to squeeze as much as we can out of this temporary life. And then when we die, okay, we've paid our insurance policy, we've paid our dues, so if there is a spiritual world, then we're fairly confident we'll go there. But the hankering, Jesus Christ himself said, the price that you pay in order to go to the spiritual world are the tears that you shed out of eagerness to get there. That's the price when you go to the ticket counter by Kunta Airways, and the ticket clerk says, okay, now you have to pay the price of the ticket, and you have to like pour out a river of tears right there on the counter before she gives you your ticket. Followers of a bona fide spiritual master have that characteristic. Maybe the average person, churchgoer, it's okay, I'll go to the spiritual world tomorrow. Today I'll enjoy restaurants and movies and novels, and I'll enjoy a big family. And it's okay, I'll have to die, we all know that, and so when that happens, I'll go to the spiritual world tomorrow. But if you're a follower, if you're under the shelter of a pure devotee of the world, the difference is, I want to go yesterday. I want to go yesterday. I can't wait. And that doesn't mean that you're otherworldly. It doesn't mean that you're irresponsible. It doesn't mean that you're not a good parent, a good husband, a good employee. Just the opposite. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him the example of a paramour. So when a woman has a paramour, she takes a special care that her husband doesn't suspect. She's extra diligent in hugging him and doing the housework and, being happy around the house. She's extra diligent about her domestic duties because she doesn't want the husband to suspect that she has a paramour on the side. And devotees are like that. They're not, because their focus is set on the spiritual world, it doesn't mean that they're irresponsible in the here and now. In fact, those who aspire to go to the spiritual world tend to be more responsible. They tend to have more integrity. They tend to have deeper and more intimate, loving relationships with their employees, their employers, their family members, their co-workers. They tend to be more diligent in the temporal duties of this world. There's Swadharma and then Sanatan Dharma. There's the constitutional duty of the spirit soul to serve God in eternity, but we've also got this body, and in the here and now, each and every one of us need to be a light. Not only do we have our sights set on the spiritual world, but we also have to be a light to our wives, to our children, to our co-workers. When they see us, just as when we saw Prabhupada, we saw the spiritual world. So when those with whom we interact see us, they need to see the spiritual world through us. So we need to act in such a way that we are above criticism, we are above blame in this world, so that those who interact with us, those who depend upon us, those who look to us for a standard of behavior will also be attracted to the spiritual world itself. And all that we got from Prabhupada, that was Prabhupada's gift. That was Prabhupada's legacy to us. And some people might think, well, that's fine. But, statements such as, you can't go to the spiritual world unless you serve a spiritual man. True, is that really necessary? Well, it is. It's explained that this material body takes birth from the body of our mother who has been inseminated by our material father. Every living being in this material world has a father and a mother from whom they derive this material body. The baboons have that in common, the snakes have that in common, the chickens have that in common, the aquatics have that in common, the birds of the air have that in common. The only thing that distinguishes the human being is not necessarily the fact that he took birth, that he got a body from his father and mother. He has that in common with just about every living being. And the only thing that sets the human being apart, potentially, or can distinguish him from all the other species of life, is that he takes not only one birth, but he has the possibility of taking a second birth from a bona fide, realized spiritual master, devotee of the Lord. And it is really only after taking spiritual birth and accepting a spiritual father that one can go to the spiritual world. And that's pretty self-evident once you say that. My Christian name that I got from my mother and father was Chris. That's a pretty spiritual name. It comes from Christ. That's good. But then my initiated name, when I got initiated from my spiritual master, he called me as Caru. So someone might say, well, Chris is named for Christ, or you might even say Krishna, name for Krishna. Caru is also a name. Caru means beautiful. Das means servant. So Caru means servant and the most beautiful. What was the need for changing the name? You already had a pretty good spiritual name. The answer is that the change of name indicates the second birth. It indicates Chris was a spiritual name, but it came with the material body, material circumstances, material conditioning, material karma. Caru is the name given by my spiritual father to indicate my spiritual birth. See what I'm saying? Initiation by a bona fide spiritual master is the beginning. It's the beginning of one's spiritual life. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, Mahatmanas tu mamparta devim prakritimashita bhajanti ananyamanasho gyatva buddhitam avyayam. The Mahatmas, the great souls, are not just powerful political leaders. Someone said that they weren't sure whether Gandhi was a politician among saints or a saint among politicians. There wouldn't be any equivocation when you think about Prabhupada. Prabhupada was a saint among saints. No question about it, hands down. Fully engaged in the service of the Lord because they know him as a supreme personality of Godhead, unlimited and inexhaustible. And it is said, Yasha deve para bhaktir, tata deve tata guru. Only one who has implicit faith in the scriptures and the spiritual master is one who is qualified to achieve deliverance from birth, death, disease, and old age. Why this insistence that unless you get initiation, unless you intern, unless you apprentice yourself to a bona fide spiritual master, you can't get Krishna, you can't get to the spiritual world? This is based on the statements of Krishna himself. Krishna says, you can't get to me unless you go through a pure devotee. Why? Because, and this is God speaking, I am the property of such pure devotees. I am the property of such Mahatmas. They own me. Aham bhakta paradina hi ashvatanti iba dvija. Dvija means second birth, like I described before. Aham bhakta paradina. Krishna is speaking. God is speaking himself. Aham bhakta paradina hi ashvatanti vajide sadabir gashtariryo bhaktir bhaktir tanati. He says, pure devotees own me. I am the property of pure devotees. Kunti also says, Janmai Shreya Sutasabi Ramana. Those who are mad after aristocratic birth, beauty, education, fame, I don't know them. I don't know them. Their affiliations, their affections, their allegiances are towards those material opulences. But askinchana, janmaishriya sutta edhamanamara, navadhyabhadat, tvam akinchana gocharam. I am the property, I am owned by those who have no affection for wealth and material opulence and material advancement. Those who own nothing, I am their property. So they can give me. If you want Krishna, you can't get him directly, but you get Krishna from those who own Krishna, from his pure devotees. Lord Shiva tells his wife Parvati, she notices Lord Shiva's chanting, japa. So many people worship Lord Shiva, Maheshwara. And she says, is there some other worship besides worship of you? And he laughs and he says, Aradhanam Sarvishtam. He says, there are many types of worship, but of all the different types of worship, Vishnu Aradhanam Param, the worship of Vishnu is the best. He said, even I worship Vishnu. Tajmai Paratanam Devi, but better than worship of Vishnu, Tadiyanam Samachara, is worship of the devotees of Vishnu. Tadiyanam Samachara. Ultimately, the reason that one needs to serve a bona fide spiritual master who's fully engaged in the service of the Lord is that God is his property. He owns God because of his unalloyed, uninterrupted devotional service to the Lord. Yasha Prabhava, Yasha Prashada, Bhagavat Prasadam, Yasha Prasadan, Nagatika. Only by the mercy of the spiritual master can one get the mercy of the Lord. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, who was Krishna, and in the guise of a devotee, he was showing how one can get Krishna. He was modeling the ideal devotional path so that one can get Krishna and go to the spiritual world. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, Ai nanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishameva kripaya tava parapankaja stita dalisarishtaramana. He says, let me simply be an atom at the lotus feet of the Lord. Let me serve the servants of 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 the servants in whatever humble capacity I can, because it is through that chain of pure devotees extending back since time immemorial that we, by clinging to that, by grabbing onto that lifeline, we also can make our lives successful, end this vicious cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age in the material world, and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. Any questions or comments? I haven't seen any questions scrolling up here. So if anybody has a question, now is the time to type it out into the comment section. Otherwise, I can take note of your comments and answer them the next time we get together. We do this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 7:30 in the morning. And we also have a live Facebook broadcast on Saturdays at 7 o'clock. Our Salt Lake City evening services have been suspended for the duration, and so in place of that, we do a live Facebook live cast on Saturday nights at 7 o'clock. So thank you for joining us. Ladali at present, Nicholas, Anna, Alona, and many others who've gone off the screen here. Hare Krishna.